So I'm with Louise, the co-founder and chief product officer of Valispace. Now, Louise, you graduated from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm in engineering and physics, and then did an intensive course at the International Space University, before then enrolling at the European Space Agency as an intern in the Guidance, Navigation and Control Systems Division. You then went on to work as an attitude and orbital control systems engineer at OHB and TechOvid. My first question to you then, Louise, is why did you stop this exciting career trajectory to start Valispace?
That's a very good question. I love engineering and I love what engineers do and the products that we were building, and I love space. So I loved my career in that sense. But I always thought that the way that we were working as engineers was very inefficient, right? So I thought we were going to work with all the coolest technologies and all of the best software that there is. But then when I started working, it was very document-based, document-driven, the way we worked. And it was very difficult to find information or search for the right values or transmit that information to everyone on the team. So starting Valispace was a mission to help engineers to work more efficiently and to help empower engineers to do what they do best, right? What they love to do, which is develop great products instead of having these document management in their daily lives.
So you said that you've always loved engineering. Do you remember the first time that you felt that, okay, I want to be an engineer? Or the first time that you remember falling in love with this career?
I think from very early on, from when I was a child, I loved experimenting with things, right? I was always, every machine that we had at home, I took it apart and then I put it together again. Mm-hmm. So I always loved these kind of technology things and seeing how things work. And I think that's what engineering is all about, right? Seeing a problem and figuring out how things work and then putting together a better solution. And I think I had that always in my life, and I was always very curious. And yeah, I think I knew very early on that I wanted to be an engineer. And we also have a family of engineers.
Interesting. So my next question was going to be whether having a career as an engineer would feel, at any time, if it felt implausible. But I'm guessing if you came from a family of engineers, then maybe you're standing on the shoulders of giants already in some way.
Yeah, and I think I went, when I decided to university, I always knew I wanted to be an engineer. But then I decided to go to physics engineering because I thought it was the most challenging. And I remember that my mom was saying at the time that, well, physics engineering, are you sure? Like it's engineering is great, but like physics engineering, either you will become a scientist or you will become an astronaut. And I said, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. That sounds pretty great. So I think physics always fascinated me also, and the way that we think about the world, right? How to think about how the world works.
And you mentioned the word challenge in that last answer. So you clearly like to be mentally stimulated. You clearly like to be involved in an industry that's challenging.
Yes, for sure.
You mentioned to me before that in your first day as an aerospace engineer, you had hundreds of documents landed on your desk. Now, is that hundreds of documents figuratively, digitally, or literally a big stack of paper that would land on a desk?
On the first day of my work, it was literally a big stack of paper on my desk.
Well, to me, that's crazy. To me, coming from somebody that comes outside of this industry and assumes that this is an industry where everybody is super scientific, you're almost working within this holographic technology where you're swiping through thin air. But what you're describing to me is something wildly different.
Yes, I think when people think about space and space technology, people think a lot about the forefront of technology, and the way that we're working is going to be like the best, using the best tools and the best way of working. But so when when the space programs launched in the 70s, 60s, 70s, right? The way that they worked was really with documents. And today it has not evolved so much, like taking advantage of these digitalization. What we did was we put the documents instead of in paper on digital, right? And that's not the best way of working even today.
So it's, in a sense, it's just like to like. It's digitization just for the name of it, without it really making a difference. You're still working with reams of documents.
Yes.
And I've heard a statistic that says that maybe this is a falsehood. Maybe you can correct me. But the modern smartphone has more memory than the program that was used for the Apollo missions.
Yeah, that's true.
So we've developed in a crazy way in terms of the ability to have these powerful systems in our pockets.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that are on the forefront of technology, they're not developing their products in a way that's changed in the last 50 years, you say?
Yeah, especially the bigger companies, right? That they still are kind of stuck in this document-based way of working, thinking of inputs and outputs and what documents should we present to the next person that needs to work on this.
Why do you think they're stuck in this system?
I think there are just no good tools out there today to mitigate that problem. And that's why we started Valispace. That's what we found when we started Valispace. And
I've heard you in the past. You've talked about revolutionizing the way that engineers work. So what does this mean to you?
We want every engineer to be able to focus on what they do best, which is innovating, which is building great products, and bringing technology to a place where it helps everyone on Earth. And doing this, they need the best tools to do this. They cannot be stuck in searching for information that they need, or stuck in meetings discussing something that is clear from the start. And to bring those tools to the engineers, to empower them to be able to do what they do best, which is solving problems. We need to bring them those tools to be able to help them in their decision making, process.
Yeah, and tell me what impact you think that has, not just on the engineering industry and the lives of engineers, but maybe what impact that might have on the wider world, and maybe the trajectory of us as human beings as well. And whether you think that by revolutionizing the tools that engineers use, whether that can have a big difference.
I think it will have a big difference. I think that technology is the future. Technology is everywhere today, right? Technology is in everyday lives. We use technology for everything that we do, and engineers are the ones who bring this cutting edge technology forward. And if we help them do that more efficiently or better, then I believe that we will have a better world in the end.
Nice. And I think the thing is that when you describe these things, so revolutionizing the way that engineers work, it seems simple, right? But maybe you can tell me how much of a challenge this actually is.
It's a challenge because it's not only about bringing the right tools to people, to engineers. It's also about changing the mindsets of how engineering is done and bringing engineering to a more agile way of working. I always like to take the parallel to the software industry because we've seen in the past 10, 20 years a revolution in the way that software is built. 20 years ago, there was very limited technology of how, or tools of how to collaborate in software and how to share your knowledge. And in hardware, we're 20 years behind the software, right? We don't have yet the revolution that happened in the software industry with GitHub, with all of these tools that we use today to bring software out in an agile way. We don't have that in hardware yet. And that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, actually. And if we think about the way that software was built, let's say in the mid-90s, I can imagine still clunky ways of working, lots of engineers and lots of software developers. But we fast forward now in 20 years, and you have big, let's say, big softwares like WhatsApp or other things that's used by billions of people, drastically has changed the way that we communicate. But it's been built by, let's say, less than 10% of what it might have taken to build a similar product back then.
Yeah.
And I think that if we think about what this might do to the hardware industry and the kind of things that our engineers are building, I think if you put climate change in this mix, I think the need to revolutionize the way that engineers build things is existential and completely important. And I wonder if this is something that you have in mind when you're trying to build a software like Valispace.
Yes, for sure. We are building the software to empower the engineers that will come up with the solutions to climate change, to any other problem that we have in the world. And I truly believe that technology is gonna help in all of those issues that we're having right now in the world. And we want engineers to be able to solve these problems in the most frictionless way that they can.
So you're optimistic then? You're optimistic about the capacity for human beings to fix this mess?
I'm optimistic, yes, I am. Yeah.
I think you have to be. So tell me, when you started the company, okay, so describe to me the scene. Talk to me about the personas involved and how the idea started and then how it started to quickly develop.
When I met Marco, my co-founder and CEO of Valispace, it was in an event. So we went to an event called Startup Weekend in Germany, in Bremen, and it was a startup weekend with the theme of space. So a lot of really brilliant minds coming together and trying to pitch ideas of how to new ideas about business in space and technology. And Marco came there and he pitched this idea of the way that we are working today is not very efficient. And why don't we make a software that helps engineers, empowers engineers to do their work more efficiently? And it immediately clicked with me. I identified a lot with that problem. And I had been thinking in the past of ways to help this or to make my own work more efficient. And when I heard his pitch, I was immediately enthusiastic about it. And we started working on that weekend together with a team of other people. And we worked on the business plan. We worked on figuring out if this is a viable idea or not. And then at the end of the weekend, we presented, we pitched. We didn't win on the startup weekend, but
Do you remember the idea that won?
The idea that won was, I believe it was a piece of hardware to connect different parts of a satellite, right? So it was more of a hardware solution.
Do you remember, you say there were some minds that were from the space industry there, or maybe they all were.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that when you pitched that idea, whether the penny dropped for others as well? Whether this was something that people said to you, I recognize this problem?
Yeah, for a lot of people that were there, yes, they recognized it. And
I guess then that gave you maybe a kickstart to think, okay, we might be onto something here.
Yes. Yeah, and the way that we presented it in the very first pitch that we did on the finals of this weekend, we tried to compare the way that we're working today, which is a lot of Excel files, a lot of Word documents with data inside, to what we imagined that Valispace would be. So we tried to make people do that comparison, and I think that clicked with a lot of people, and it kickstarted us a bit to work.
But tell me what happened next. So you have the idea, you think it's good, other people think it's good, the problem's there, this clear pain in the industry. So what happened next?
So what happened next is that we wanted to make a prototype of this software that we had in our heads to show to people and to ask if, or to make sure that this is the right solution to go. And we, as hardware engineers, not software engineers, we started clicking the right buttons on the keyboards and tried to program something.
And you had some knowledge of programming in the past.
A bit of knowledge, yes. We learned a lot on the way, but we had a bit of knowledge as engineers.
Let's explore the ins and outs of that software at the time. Then, okay. So you might look back maybe with some slight embarrassment, but this is fine. What language were you writing in then, and what was the infrastructure of the software? What was the architecture?
We started with Django from the start, so Python and Django, and the reason was mostly that was the language that we knew best at the time, and we knew that we wanted a framework, a technology that could scale. So Django and Postgres was like the basis of what we were doing. In the beginning, for the front end, we used like vanilla JavaScript, jQuery. And
were you just using libraries that were already existing at the time, or were you actually creating new pieces of your front end?
No, we were creating some pieces, but we were also using libraries that exist, like Bootstrap, like other libraries like jQuery, for example, to help us. And then we created like a very basic front end, I would say. I remember at the time it was probably me doing the design, and it was all red, which is probably not the best idea.
Yeah, I don't think that's the most calming of colors.
No.
And especially when you're trying to create a software that lowers engineers' blood pressure.
Yes, it was.
The signals are not there. So,
no, we were nor software engineers nor designers. So yes.
So who was describe to me the scene back then? Were you programming in someone's house? How many of you were there? Was it like an episode of Silicon Valley or something like this?
Yeah, it was funny because it was at the time when Silicon Valley came out, and we started watching the series.
So Marco was skillful.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a lot. It was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun also. So it was me and Marco and Simon, who is the third co-founder. And we all were living in different places in Europe. So we had to find a way of how to work together. So almost every month we went to one of our houses, and we sat there the whole weekend, programmed. We went to bed at 3 a.m. in the morning. Wow. And we woke up the next day programming again and trying to build this prototype.
When you look back at that time, what are the emotions that stick out to you? Do you remember feeling like that was an exciting time, or was it tiring? Or
it was both exciting and tiring. It was exciting because we were doing something new. We were doing something that we really believed that would change the way that engineers work. And it was tiring because we had still our full-time day jobs. So we were trying to do this on the weekends and evenings, and anytime we could grab our hands on it, we were trying to make something work. But it was exciting. It was fun. I was learning something new every day.
Wow, and it's from what you've already expressed to me in this conversation, I get the feeling that you're somebody that likes to learn new things.
Yes.
And new challenging things as well.
Yes, I think I work best when there is a challenge to solve. And
it sounds like you were also energized by the solution. I think maybe because you had lived that pain of being an engineer with so many documents, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of potentially fixing that and providing a solution for engineers is something that made you work through that tiredness.
Yeah. And I was energized by the reaction of people that saw the software, even if it was just a prototype, even if it was just a badly programmed software at the time. You could see, I remember very well that I was on our first conference. Like we didn't have much money, so we had to choose. Like I went to one conference, Marco went to the other one, so we didn't go together. And I was a bit nervous in the beginning. I was there all alone, trying to talk with people, trying to figure out who to talk to. And I sat down with a few engineers, a few head of engineering for some quite big companies. And I was very nervous, and I showed them the software. I showed, look, this is a software. Like if you enter your values here, then everything is automatically recalculated. Like you get a notification when something changes. And you could see in their eyes that they were really impressed with this very little thing that we had done. So you could immediately see that this is a problem, and they were happy that someone was solving this. So that was really cool to see.
That's super nice. And did that again, so after that weekend and speaking with these people that are high up in these established companies, that must have been another boost. That must give you some more energy itself.
Yes, for sure.
And so when and why did you make the decision to quit your job to do Valispace full time? And do you remember how that decision felt? Was it an easy one, or was it difficult?
It was difficult and easy at the same time, let's say. I did it a bit gradually. So the first thing that made us be able to do this jump was that we got some money from our friends and family, right? So
Classic.
we actually asked our friends and family, do you believe in us? They said, yeah, of course we do. They gave us some money.
That's a sneaky first question.
And they gave us some money to actually push it a bit more.
Did you remember feeling pressure after that? Because all of a sudden you have people's hard-earned money because they trust you. Does that affect then how you work?
I think it gave us a bit of pressure, of course. It gave us a bit of extra motivation as well to actually make this work. But most of all, it gave us the confidence and the courage to actually jump from our day jobs and do this full time, because we really believed in our idea and that we wanted to make a better world for engineers.
So now, I mean, let's look at today. I guess we can fast forward 5 years roughly from this point. How has your day-to-day changed? So from being somebody that's, I guess, is fully focused on just trying to create an MVP, trying to create something, speaking to people and persuading these monolithic companies to just look at your software. What's changed?
What has changed is when we started, it was a lot practical, right? We were just a few engineers that wanted to change the world, let's say, and we did a lot by ourselves, right? We needed to get customers, we needed to open a company, we needed to do the accounting, we needed to do everything, right? So we did everything ourselves. And what has changed is that now we have hired really smart people to help us reach our goals. And it's a nice quote. I don't know who said this, I don't remember, but as a founder, you always have to fire yourself from what you're doing at the time and hire someone that is better than you at doing that. Mm-hmm. And I feel that that's what we've done. So the difference from back then to today is that we have a whole team of really smart people that out here yeah. in the office that can help us reach our goals.
Well, do you remember, is that a skill that you have to learn? So the ability to trust in essentially random strangers to take forward and carry the baby that you spent so much time thinking about and developing.
Yeah, definitely. It's a shift, right? It's a shift in mindset, and it's a shift on how you work. It's trusting people and empowering people to do, to be able to reach where we want to go, and to kind of transmit that vision that we have, so that everyone understands where we want to go and works towards that.
And I think it makes it easier when you hire smart people, like you say. But is there Is there a skill to hiring smart people? Is it difficult to ensure that you've got the people that you want?
It's difficult, and that's also learning that we had, right? It's very difficult in the beginning when we were all new to this, right? I had never conducted an interview in my life before, and it's really difficult from just a 1-hour conversation or from a first impression to know if that's the person that you want to work with every day and that you want to help bring this company forward. But you also, when you do these interviews, what we did in the beginning, we had a coding challenge, right? So we had a challenge that engineers, the developers could do, and it was a live challenge. And you could see pretty clearly when we interviewed people who knew what they were talking about and who didn't. And there's also the aspect of the cultural fit, right? If this is a person that you want to work with every day, or not. So it's a.
Do you look at the way? Is there a way to judge the way that somebody thinks? Like, for example, is the ability to think outside the box something that you look for in somebody to work here?
Yes, for sure. Thinking outside the box is, I would say, is essential to the work that we're doing.
Because in a way, you're trying to create a product or you're trying to make engineers think in a way that they haven't thought before. So that has to be reflected in the people that are also building this software. But how do you notice this? How do you spot that somebody can think laterally?
It's a really difficult question, but I think we learn how to do the right questions in the interviews. And when we do a technical interview, we don't really care that people get the right answer to the question, but the way that they arrive there is more important to us. So the way that they think about a problem, if they are thinking about the consequences of a certain way that they implement something, or they're thinking about what could go wrong here, or what other solutions are there, if they think in this way, we know that they will come to the right conclusion in the end. We don't care if they have memorized all of the ways that you can solve something, but that they think in a way that we know that they will come to the solution that is best.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm looking at your mug here, and I wonder, just how do you feel about being the boss?
It's a bit strange to me. I don't really feel like a boss in that sense. And this mug was, I think, it was in the very early days of Valispace, when we were maybe 6 or 7 people. It was my birthday, and the guys in the office, they gave me this mug because they thought it was funny.
Yeah. I think it's funny too. To me, it comes across as ironic because I work with you and I work alongside you. I know that what's really nice about working here is the fact that it seems like a flat hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Both, all of you, Nelson and Marco, were always approachable and willing to hear the ideas of whether it's an intern or somebody that's been here senior as well.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see that the mug is ironic. But to be in charge of so many people, and in some ways to know that decisions you make could affect their livelihood, is that pressure?
I don't really think of it that way that much. I think that a lot of my job is to actually develop everyone that works here, and develop and coach and empower everyone that works here. And I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy seeing people grow, and I enjoy when everyone can be as autonomous as they can be and take their own decisions. So I don't see myself as taking the decisions for them, but more giving everyone the knowledge that they need, or the means that they need to arrive to that decision.
So would you say that this is one of the biggest ways that your job has changed since the start, is now that managing people is a big part of this of your process in your day-to-day?
Yeah, for sure. I think that only when everyone that works here is successful in what they are doing, the company will be successful. So that's a big part of my job as a leader of this company. Yes.
And do you think you've got better at understanding people?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you say that now your day-to-day is involved with many more meetings and much more administrational stuff than you did in the past?
For sure, more meetings. It's very different from the beginning when we're trying to program something, right? And when we're trying to go a lot to figure out what we want to build and what our vision is. To today, when there is more management and more coordination, right? So that as the team grows, everyone needs to be aligned and everyone needs to move in the same direction. And that's a lot of the work today.
I wonder if you say you do a lot of meetings. I wonder if you know the difference between a productive and a useless meeting. I'm sure you've had both. And I wonder if there's something that can differentiate the two.
Yeah, I have both every day, I would say.
What about this meeting? This is useless.
No, this meeting is nice. Okay. No, a productive meeting, I think it's really important for a productive meeting to set the context of what this meeting is about. No one wants to come to the room and not know why they are there or what the purpose of this meeting is. So if we set a meeting, then the context has to be clear and the outcome of what we want at the end of this meeting to be clear to everyone in the room.
Makes sense. So that you don't spend the first 10 minutes just catching up or making people stare at you with blank looks.
I think that's important too. I think catching up, I always try to, when I jump into a meeting, is never, okay, this is the agenda, this is what we need to do, right? It's catching up a bit, asking how people are, asking how their weekend was, how their day was.
The human side.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Because you're doing more admin stuff now, and you mentioned lots of meetings, lots of people management, are there any times that you kind of wish that you were an aerospace engineer again, doing the building hardware and actually, physically doing things?
Sometimes I miss it. Sometimes I miss the hardware engineering part. But then I go to talk to a customer that actually does hardware engineering and I learn a lot from them. So I get super excited when we talk with our customers and we look at the problems that they're having, and it's not only tool problems, right? When we talk with customers, they have problems of how do we design this engine in the best way, or how do we make different versions of our product? And it's really interesting problems that they have, and it kind of brings me back into that hardware engineering world, which is really exciting for me. Our customers do amazing things, so it's super exciting to work with them.
Maybe once a hardware engineer, always a hardware engineer.
I think so, yes.
And who knows? I don't think you can ever rule out what somebody does in the future, right? Maybe once you've solved the issue of allowing engineers to work faster and smarter, then you can join this. You can join it back again without the need for lots of documents.
Exactly. Then Valispace can build satellites as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges to building a complex piece of software like this? Like, you mentioned that initially you were focusing on a lot of writing the code and trying to build the software infrastructure. And maybe we can think about this question from a software perspective and maybe from a technical side.
So if I knew back then, 5 years ago, what I know today, we would probably not have implemented the software in the way that we did. And this is good. I think it's always for every software engineer, for every developer, if you look back at the code that you did 1 week ago and you're happy with it, then probably something is wrong. You should learn something every day and you should make better code than you did the day before or the year before.
So, in terms of now, what makes the code better than it was back then?
it's a lot more scalable. It's a lot more well-written code, let's say. When we started, we wrote a very small piece of code. Let's say we had a very limited idea of what we wanted to do, and then we learned a lot. So we took these things that we hear from customer, that we had got experience from our own jobs as well, and we kind of put that together, and we grew the software kind of organically. And then what you have to do is you have to go back and see, well, maybe just by adding more things, we will not be as scalable as we want to be. So we need to rewrite parts of the code and rewrite it in a good way so that we can solve the problems in a better way, right? So you need to look back at what you did and rethink a bit and think more outside the box, right? Rethink how you did the things and try to make it better.
So I guess part of being a chief product officer is that you're somebody that's involved in thinking about the vision of the company and the vision of the software, and maybe trying to work out the strategy then of how you go from here where we are now to there where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can talk about what drives the strategic process for you. And also maybe how that strategy has developed from the 5 years that you've been running this company.
Yeah, it's very different now from 5 years ago. In the beginning, we had all the vision in our heads, right? We had this idea of where we wanted to go, and we want to revolutionize the hardware industry. We want to revolutionize the way that engineers work. And the more people that we get on the team, the more our job is not to have that vision in our heads, but to transmit that to the team. And again, making sure that everyone works in the same direction and is aligned. And the way that we try to do this is to set the goal, right? Our vision is to bring something special to engineers, right? To bring something that they didn't have before, not to make another management system or another tool or a better version of a tool that already exists. We are actually creating something new here that didn't exist before. So we're filling this void that wasn't filled before. And this is really difficult to do. But we're trying to transmit the vision of what we want to be is a smart system for engineers to be able to take better decisions and to be able to build their products in a more optimized way, more efficient way. And we're trying to transmit this to the team every day. And recently, to help align everyone, we introduced what we call the Valispace bets framework, right? So how to get there is by taking bets on something that we have as an insight, or we have as a learning from the past. And we say, if we do this, then our software will take us one step closer to where we want to be with the software. And we do this as a bet because we don't know the outcome yet. We don't know that this will actually bring us further. But we know that as a bet, this can be challenged, right? By everyone on the team. We have insights that we got. We have assumptions that we take on the way. And these assumptions can be challenged by anyone on the team to say, is this really true or is it not? And then we back it up with data. That we're trying with these bets framework to align everyone on how strategically we will get to where we want to be.
That's really interesting. And I guess then that happens in all the different sub-departments of the company as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like a process that's initially driven by intuition. Then it has to be backed up by data that you might already have from new statistics or other things within the field itself. What do you think of the advantages are of following a strategy that involves bets and intuitions? How do you think that might be able to get you to the product that you want faster?
I think there is a reason why we call it bets, right? And a bet is uncertain, right? You don't know if you're going to win or lose, and that's what we want to transmit to the team as well. That we don't want to say we are certain that this is going to work. We are not certain, but we want to make the best possible, as you said, with data, with backing up our assumption, the best possible bet that will bring us forward. And the reason why it's a bet is also that it can be challenged, and we can also discard it. If this didn't work, then we shouldn't continue doing it, right? We should do something different that will bring us closer to where we want to be.
What's the famous quote about the definition of insanity?
It's if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome.
Exactly. And is that something that drives this kind of process, or the thinking behind it?
Yeah, I think so. If we feel that we're going in the wrong direction and we keep doing the same thing, then we're doing something wrong. We need to bring everyone then to align and to go back to the direction that we want to go.
So can you give any examples, or oops does anything come to mind in where that's actually happened here at Valispace? So you've had to pivot, or you've had to change strategy in some way because something that you're doing, or a route that you were going down just wasn't working.
Yeah, it happened a lot of times, I think.
I bet. Yeah.
I think always when we look back, it's let's take an example of going to conferences, right? We all, in the beginning, we were very focused on the space industry and going to space conferences, and we just did that because we went to a few. It was quite nice, and we continue doing that. But then after a while, you start thinking of, why are we doing that, right? What is the actual outcome that we get from that? And we realized also that space is probably a very small market, and we want to go. We already knew from the start that we wanted to go to other markets, but that those conferences would not get us further to where we want to be, right?
So yeah, you mentioned that initially you focus, I guess, solely around the space industry. But now I've noticed that there's, in terms of the engineers that use Valispace and why they do, so varied. There's so many different kinds of hardware that's being built in the software. Maybe you can tell me about some of the customers or industries that are working with Valispace that really excite you. That when you think they're using the product that you've built, you think, wow.
I think there are a lot of space companies that are really exciting. I think ClearSpace is one of them.
What do they do?
They're building satellites to clean the space. Let's say we have a lot of space debris in orbit around the Earth, and we need some way to take it down to not pollute the space in the same way that we pollute the Earth.
Clear space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they are a super exciting company to work with, also in terms of methodology of how they do things, because they are trying to work more agile, and that's why they are using Valispace to manage their data and to help them to take decisions. And it's super exciting to talk with these engineers that know what they are doing and are trying to change the industry.
To me, it's really exciting as well, because it feels like sci-fi.
Yeah.
And in which ways do you know in which ways that they're cleaning space? Like from a technical perspective, what are they physically doing? Because I've heard in the past that some companies are thinking about nets that they launch, right, and taking down these old satellites, or some people are thinking about lasers. And I think this does feel like sci-fi, and it's crazy that it's happening now.
Yeah, there have been a lot of different solutions, a lot of different attempts to do this. I also know that there have been talks about harpoons to kind of stick them in the satellite and bring them back to Earth. But the approach of ClearSpace, if I'm not mistaken, is to more grab the satellites. So to to go to the space debris that is there, grab it, and then bring it back to Earth.
And what that would work that they, I guess, that they would both come down to Earth together and just burn up in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Exciting. Well, let's keep an eye on to see how they how they work. I think some of the more astute of the people that are watching this will notice that you don't have a Portuguese accent.
Yeah.
So, what brought you to Lisbon? Why are you here?
So I came to Lisbon I've been here almost 8 years, so it's been a while. It feels like home now as well. I have 2 homes.
Fala português?
Sim, falo bocadinho, sim. Podemos falar português também. No, I have 2 homes now, right? And that's great. I have Stockholm, which is my hometown, and where most of my family is. And then I have Lisbon in Portugal, which also feels like home to me.
Nice. But what made you bring the company here as well? Because you said you were here 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. So you were already in Lisbon when you and Marco had the idea of Valispace. Yeah.
Yeah, I was already in Lisbon. I was working here at TechEver. And my husband is Portuguese. So that's why we decided to settle down here from the start. And when we decided because we were all in these different places as founders, and we had to decide where to open the main office of Valispace, where should we hire people, where should we build up the office that we want to have. And it was a bit by chance, but we also asked a few people, would you prefer to work in Lisbon, Portugal, or would you prefer to work in Bremen, Germany? And I think people kind of gravitated toward Lisbon. I think Lisbon is just a great place to be for a startup, and it's a great place to find talent. There are a lot of people that want to come to Lisbon because of the weather, because of the food, because of the Portuguese people that are amazing. So,
well, let's explore that. Why do you like this country, and why do you like this city?
It's difficult to describe the feeling, but I get a really good feeling when I'm in Lisbon, when I'm in Portugal. I think people are super friendly always, and it's very chill. It's a very relaxed place to be, I would say, and there is a lot of things to do here, right? There is the beach 20 minutes from the center of Lisbon. There is a lot of great nature around for hiking, for exploring things. It's.
And do you get the chance to explore much of Portugal?
Yeah, I've explored a few things. I really like the north of Portugal. I think Gerês is super beautiful. Hiking there and being in the nature is something that I really love.
And I think the food here is really nice. The produce is super good. And then you have sweet treats like pastas de nata.
Yes.
And they've been looking at me this whole time.
Yeah, it's something that I was not really used to. Like in Sweden, it's a bit less. It's a bit more healthy, I would say. It's a bit less of these kind of pastries. But I got used to it, and now I really like the pastel de nata.
Would you say that when you hire people that move to Lisbon, especially for the job, mm-hmm. do you think that, what's your opinion of their opinion? Do you get a sense that they like living here?
Yes, I do. I think you can see it in our team today. I think, I don't know the percentage, but probably 40% of our people are foreigners, are not Portuguese. And they either already lived in Portugal and we hired them here, or they actually moved to Portugal to work at Valispace. So
that's cool.
I think that's
like a big magnet.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell me a bit about what you do in your spare time.
So in my spare time, I like to do gymnastics. I like to do a lot of sports, but I do mostly gymnastics. And it helps me a lot to relax. I wouldn't say it's relaxing, but it's relaxing for the mind, right? To do something different and to take away everything that has to do with work or that has to do with sitting in front of the computer and get active.
And I guess with something like gymnastics, because of the dangerous nature within it, if you're flipping around constantly, then there's a need for you, maybe not just a need, but it's essential that you're not thinking about anything else, because a lack of focus can mean injury.
Oh, definitely, yes.
So,
especially when you're trying something new. You need to focus.
So maybe that's a really nice, mindful way of switching off from work.
Yeah, it is. And I also coach. I coach gymnastics.
Oh, nice.
And I love it. I think it's really great.
And I noticed one of the recent interns is actually from your gymnastics team.
Yes.
So maybe we can have a gymnastics division here in Valispace.
Yes, for sure. I would like to have a gymnastics team here.
Do you have any feeling for what is the right amount of work-life balance?
That's a good question. I try to have a balance. Let's say I try to work at work, and then when I go home or when I go to gymnastics or the weekends, try to do other things to clear my mind or to relax. I think these moments of not thinking about anything or relaxing is essential also for your creativity and for being able to think a bit more clear and outside of the box. And I try to do that, but I'm also super excited about work, and sometimes I think too much about it.
That's good though.
That's good, yeah.
And I guess maybe the thing is that because you're excited about work, then if the work-life balance tips a little bit more to work, or you're actively thinking about it in a positive way, then I think that's not something that will affect you negatively. You know, I think some people, they struggle with work-life balance because they don't like what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, and would you have any advice for somebody that doesn't like what they're doing and feels like that their work-life balance is off kilter?
Join Valispace? No. No, I think you really need to do something that you love. I think if you don't do something for work that you really like doing, then you're in the wrong field. Work shouldn't feel like something that you have to do or that you're obliged to do to get your paycheck every month, right? Then you will go crazy. I think work has to feel like something that you enjoy doing, and also enjoy working with your colleagues and enjoy learning things and discussing new ideas. And that's when you will thrive also and learn.
I like it. So one last question. And you mentioned the gymnastics, but aside from that, how do you switch off?
I like being in nature, so going hiking or mountain climbing or doing something physical. Usually for me is how I switch off. Sometimes it's also watching Netflix or watching a movie or just relaxing, eating popcorn at home in the sofa. But I like for relaxing my mind, I usually like doing something physical and challenging myself in other ways also.
I had a feeling that was going to be the answer. Okay, Louise, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. And I feel like I've got to know you more. So thank you for sitting down. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.